We're looking here at the Excel activity for the financial statements, cash flow, and taxes. So I had a couple of people ask, just we're a little confused on how to get started with it. And this is one of those problems I'd imagine you're probably overthinking at least what it's wanting you to do or how to progress through it. So it gives us some information here with their balance sheet, and then it tells us some beginning information about their sales and some other information, right? You can see I've already started working through this, right? So let's come up here and I'll delete some of these. To show you how I went about getting those numbers, right? Because that's the important thing. Right, so we'll just delete those for now, and you'll see how it's gonna come back. So let me come back here so to clear those check marks off. Okay, so the key, what I found out helps a lot with these. Here's a template here that you're going to open up. So when you click on this, it's going to open up this template. If I can bring it over here. Right, so it tells us the same type of information here. So it puts it just where we can use it in Excel. So one thing to keep in mind is part of the practice is using formulas. So you notice down here is where we're going to start doing our information. So if you fill it in here and then carry it over there and check your work, that's really the key in how you're going to be able to work through it. Okay, so how did I do this? Well, this is where you're probably putting way too much thought into it. We're just going to use what we know and kind of fill in the gaps. All right, so the first thing it says I know as far as my income statement is concerned is I have sales of $450,150. So that's really what I came here. So I guess ideally even I'd say equals and I'd reference that cell, right? So we want to use cell references where we can. So that's why it's showing up there as the formula. So the next thing that I know is not really that. I know that, and we'll delete that. I know it says that earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization as a percentage of sales, right? So I don't necessarily know the next line, but I know the third line. So I'm going to say that's going to be equal to, right, my sales multiplied by the 15%. So again, use cell references where we can. So I know that's going to be $67,523. So if I know that's the after amount, right, I know the difference here, or the amount 450,150 minus the 67,523, that's going to equal my operating costs excluding depreciation and amortization. Right? So I can back into that number, in other words, since I know the third number and the way that formula works is first line minus second line is this. Right, so again, if you keep going down here, we actually know the depreciation and amortization. Right, so depreciation and amortization is 18% of your fixed assets. So what I did here, I'm not sure to, yeah, it did. So I said equals, and I clicked my fixed assets, and I multiplied it by that 18% that it said it represented. Right, so in this case, I need the next line. So to get to earnings before interest and taxes, I simply take that line and subtract the one below it. So I can work my way down. Okay, interest. So how do we know anything about interest? Interest we do know. So it's $9,050. Right, so it's going to reference that cell. So that means I can now take that away from my EBIT, and then that's going to give me my EBT. And now my taxes, it says, was 25% tax rate. Right, so I could say this is equal to my 45,988. And it's up here somewhere. Here we go. 25% tax rate. So I even know my tax rate. So that's really one of the keys is filling it in here. And then my common dividends, right? So we know net income is 34,491. Well, my dividend percentage, part of that's going to be paid out to my shareholders. So I'm going to take this amount and multiply it by the 47.25% that goes out to my shareholders, right? And then if I take this away from my net income, that means whatever I didn't pay out to common dividends is going to be in my retained earnings. So that's how that part works. And then I'll get us started here. I'll leave some challenge for you, right? Um, but we come down here, and it starts out here wanting to know our statement of stockholders' equity, right? So this starts out with our December 31st, 2020 balances. So that 95,000, 36,930, and 131,930 are this line is my common stock, that's my retained earnings, and then that's my total common equity. So I know those lines. And you notice here, I know my ending balances in each of those two. Right, so I can also come down and reference those cells and fill out the endings. Right, we also know my common stock issue, right? How do we know my common stock issue? One or two ways. It's the difference between my ending. So I took my ending and subtracted my beginning just to keep a positive number. Right, so that's 7,500. It's same thing as we looked up here. You see how it changed. The retained earnings, right? I'll just kind of talk through what you do, right? We know what net income is, right? We said that's going to be equal to that amount. And we know how much we're going to be paying in dividends. That's going to be that amount. So then I need to make sure, does that tie in? It should make this equal. For if I start and work through it, I'm going to end up with that 55,124. Right, same thing over here for the stockholders' equity. Just reference the stock issue and then the addition to the retained earnings. So when do we have that? But that's the key, is kind of in this one filling in the numbers based off of what we have and then filling in the gaps. And then the other thing, just so when I'm bringing it over here, we'll just put one of these in, that 450150, which no challenge. So I'm going to come here, fill this in. So what I can do here, I can come down here and I can say check my work. Right, so I can keep doing that, and I can make sure that I have the information the way I need it to be. Right, so that's how you can check it as you keep going through. And then when you get to the very end, that's when you're going to be able to hit next, and that should be able to help you where you're going to be able to submit the problem there. Right, you can say submit. Right, so say submit for grading. So that's what you want to do. Obviously, we wouldn't want to do it like I did it. You'd want to fill it in, right? Don't send it up blank, because that's not going to turn out very well. But that's how I'd go about working through the Excel there, or the problem there. And the key here being this Excel. Open up the Excel template and work in it. So hopefully that'll help you a little bit.